Medieval warfare was never just about honor or skill. It was about survival in the harshest, bloodiest conditions imaginable. Beyond the romanticized image of knights and chivalry lay a world of brutally efficient weaponry designed for one purpose: to end a fight as quickly and decisively as possible. Soldiers and knights had to face tools of war that weren't only deadly but also capable of turning their armor, training, and strength into meaningless advantages. In this world, hesitation was fatal, and even the best equipped warrior could be brought down in seconds. Number 1. Warhammer. The warhammer was a specialized weapon developed during the late medieval period in direct response to the evolution of armor. As plate armor became more widespread and resistant to cutting or stabbing attacks, traditional swords and spears became less effective against well-equipped opponents. To address this problem, weapons were needed that didn't rely on penetration but rather focused on delivering concussive force. The warhammer was one of the most efficient answers to that challenge. Structurally, the warhammer came in various forms, but most designs featured a short to medium-length handle, allowing for fast, controlled strikes in close combat. One side of the head was usually flat or slightly rounded, intended to deliver a heavy, focused blow to the armor. The other side often included a spike or beak, which could concentrate force into a small point, capable of penetrating vulnerable joints or thinner areas of armor. Some versions even had both a hammer and a spike on the same side, giving the wielder versatility in different combat scenarios. The main tactical advantage of the warhammer was its ability to cause damage through armor. Even if the weapon didn't break through the metal, the sheer kinetic energy of the strike could result in serious injuries such as bone fractures, organ trauma, or concussions. Blunt force trauma of this nature was particularly dangerous because it bypassed many of the defensive advantages that plate armor provided. Soldiers hit in the chest or head by a warhammer could be incapacitated without any visible cuts, making this weapon highly effective in disabling an opponent without necessarily killing them immediately. The warhammer was especially favored in close quarters combat, such as during sieges or in the tight formations of infantry battles, where room for wide sword swings was limited. Unlike polearms, which required space and reach, the warhammer was compact and easy to maneuver in confined areas. Its weight distribution and short reach made it more suitable for grappling situations or fighting in crowded environments, such as castle interiors or narrow city streets during urban warfare. Another significant factor was the training required to use the warhammer effectively. While not as complex as swordsmanship, using it efficiently still demanded an understanding of timing, targeting weak points in enemy armor, and controlling the direction of force. The goal was not just to swing with strength, but to place the blow where it would do the most damage, such as the side of the helmet, the gaps under the arms, or the lower back. Number 2. Longbow. The longbow was not a simple tool. It was a carefully engineered weapon system that demanded extraordinary physical strength, precision, and years of training. Though it appeared to be nothing more than a tall piece of yew wood strung tightly with a hemp cord, in reality, it was one of the most effective and influential ranged weapons of the medieval period. What made the longbow particularly remarkable was not just its killing power, but its strategic value in shaping entire battles from a distance, long before opposing forces ever made contact on foot. Its power came primarily from the draw weight, which in many cases exceeded 100 or even 120 pounds. To put that in perspective, modern hunting bows typically draw at around 40 to 70 pounds. This meant that medieval longbowmen had to develop exceptional upper body strength, particularly in the back and shoulders. Over time, their skeletons even adapted to the physical stress, which has been confirmed through archaeological findings of archer remains showing enlarged bone structures on one side of the body. But strength alone wasn't enough. Accuracy was just as important. An archer had to be able to judge wind, distance, and elevation on instinct, often in the chaos of a battlefield where conditions were constantly shifting. Longbows had an effective range of up to 250 yards for aimed shots, and in mass volleys they could reach even farther. This made them especially useful in open battlefields, where terrain allowed for extended sightlines. One of the most documented and devastating uses of the longbow was at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, where thousands of English archers positioned behind wooden stakes unleashed wave after wave of arrows onto French forces bogged down in muddy terrain. The results were catastrophic. Cavalry and heavily armored knights were cut down before they ever had a chance to engage. Arrows penetrated through mail and sometimes even through thinner plate sections, especially at close or downward angles. Unlike crossbows, which were easier to learn and slower to reload, the longbow required consistent practice from a very young age. In fact, laws were put in place in medieval England, requiring boys to train with bows from childhood. This national investment in training produced a corps of archers who were not only physically capable but mentally conditioned for battle. A skilled archer could release 5 to 6 arrows per minute with lethal force, creating a sustained and relentless pressure on the enemy. And when deployed in large numbers, these archers functioned like early artillery units, using range and volume of fire to control the battlefield. The psychological effect of a longbow volley was also significant. Imagine advancing toward an enemy line and suddenly being met with a hailstorm of arrows, falling fast, whistling through the air, striking with deadly force. Horses panicked, formations broke apart, and morale collapsed. The enemy often lost cohesion before they ever reached the front lines. Archers typically operated from prepared positions, sometimes hidden behind natural cover or behind defensive stakes, making it incredibly difficult for opponents to retaliate effectively. Their mobility allowed them to reposition quickly, and their ranged capabilities kept them relatively safe from the brutal close combat fighting that dominated much of medieval warfare. Number 3. Poleaxe. The poleaxe was not a crude tool hastily thrown together for battlefield chaos. It was a deliberately crafted and highly functional weapon that evolved in direct response to the widespread adoption of full-plate armor. In a period where traditional swords and spears began to lose their effectiveness against increasingly well-armored opponents, the poleaxe stood out as a versatile and balanced solution, equally capable of offensive strikes and defensive maneuvers. It was neither overly specialized nor limited to a single purpose. Instead, it offered a variety of combat options, all built around a strong central shaft and a multi-headed striking surface. At its core, the poleaxe combined 3 different attack components: an axe blade for cleaving strikes, a hammer or blunt head on the opposite side for delivering crushing blows, and a top spike used primarily for thrusting. These features weren't ornamental or redundant. They were chosen specifically to give the wielder a response to nearly any kind of armor or fighting stance. Against opponents in chainmail or lightly armored units, the axe blade could inflict deep wounds or amputate limbs. When facing plate armor, the hammer side delivered blunt force trauma that could break bones, dent armor, or disorient the enemy. The spike allowed for narrow penetration, especially in weak spots like armpits, visors, and joints. Importantly, the poleaxe wasn't just about the head. The wooden shaft, often around 5 to 6 feet long, served both as a weapon and a tactical instrument. Fighters could use it as a lever to hook behind knees or elbows, trip opponents, or manipulate their movement. The length gave reach without making it unwieldy, and the shaft could also be used defensively to block, redirect, or jam enemy weapons. Skilled combatants frequently adjusted their grip, choking up for close-range fighting or extending out to maintain distance in open ground. This grip control made the poleaxe particularly effective in duels and structured combat, such as judicial duels or tournaments, where techniques were refined and precise. Knights and professional soldiers favored the poleaxe because it met the real needs of combat in the late Middle Ages. Unlike swords, which had limited effect against armor, the poleaxe was purpose-built to deal with the realities of armored warfare. Its weight distribution allowed for solid, controlled strikes without sacrificing balance. While it may not have been as fast as lighter weapons, its ability to end a fight with one well-placed blow gave it an edge that many respected. It was not a weapon for brute force alone. It required timing, accuracy, and a deep understanding of leverage and positioning. The poleaxe also had a psychological dimension. Seeing an opponent approach wielding a weapon that could crush, hack, and impale with equal efficiency added another layer of tension to a fight. Its presence in combat signaled not just intent to win, but to dominate through precision and control. This reputation extended beyond the battlefield into the training grounds of professional fighters, where poleaxe techniques were often considered the pinnacle of weapon mastery due to their complexity and effectiveness. In the hands of a trained fighter, the poleaxe